What's up everybody, this is Danny and this is that second part that you've been waiting for, the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus the iPhone 15 Pro Max photo comparison at night. So which one's going to take the low light crown? We're going to find out, but if you want to see video, I did a separate video on that, so go ahead and check that out. This is for photo only, but yeah, let's get into the nighttime photos and see which one comes out on top. Let's go. Let's jump right into it with the low light camera comparison. I think the best way to start is to take a look at the photos without night mode. And just like it always is when it comes to Apple versus Samsung debate, it's hard to generalize a certain characteristic because they constantly go back and forth. But let me show you some of the differences that I noticed after taking about 300 photos. They definitely go back and forth on which one takes the brighter photos, so that's all personal preference, but you will notice that exposure and dynamic range go back and forth as well. Look here where the sign is more colorful and more balanced on the iPhone in this shot, but then the dynamic range and exposure in this bar shot is definitely better on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. A lot of this will be preference, where you might like the brighter, more shadow forward processing of the iPhone in this scenario, or the more dramatic, contrasty, and vibrant shot of the S24 Ultra. Colors also went back and forth, but generally they render scenes eerily the same, so a lot of them will look very similar, but then you will get some white balance choices that will definitely make them look different here. Here the S24 Ultra went towards the colder side and the iPhone was more accurate, but here the S24 Ultra reflected that warm light perfectly and it was more accurate here. So again, you can find faults with both cameras. You know, I had to do the Coca-Cola building test to see how the red color replication compares, and while Apple isn't perfect either, I still like it better. Even though Samsung is getting closer than ever and less on the magenta side for sure, and when you start to zoom with the other lenses it gets even closer. The last zoom almost gets there for Samsung, but what's crazy though is when there's a subject in the frame, it absolutely does the opposite. Look here, the Galaxy S24 Ultra produces that accurate red where the iPhone washes out the building, so yeah, this is just the way it goes. But the detail is what I was most interested in, and without night mode, they both have incredible detail. Look at just how much information is here. I do appreciate the S24 Ultra because it does retain more of that nighttime look, but when it comes to the details, the iPhone usually picks up more at night because of its processing and 24 megapixel output. But take a look at here, when punching in, the S24 Ultra keeps up extremely well with the detail, so I'm happy to see this. In most of the pictures, you will really have to look hard to tell a significant difference, and textures are being picked up equally or even better at times, so Samsung has improved in this department in the last couple of years. The only thing I noticed with the photos is that the iPhone 15 Pro Max does better with the noise reduction. When you punch in and you're viewing this on a larger screen like a TV, you will see that there is some noise in the photo, but it's not distracting, so I don't mind a little more noise to get a more detailed shot. When it gets a little darker, you can really see how the noise reduction differs between the two. Crop in here and you can see the blurring effect or smearing from the aggressive noise reduction on the iPhone, where the S24 Ultra definitely lets the noise happen, and while there is definitely more noise, I would prefer this. There's undoubtedly some over sharpening here too to make it a little bit clearer, but the only downside is sometimes during super low light conditions and you aren't still, you will get a blurred shot like this that you see here. I was walking slowly when I took this shot where the iPhone is still clear, so I'm sure some of you Samsung users know what I'm talking about. Here are some before and afters. This will give you a better idea of what night mode can do, and as expected, both of them brighten up the scene nicely. They sharpen the image up and saturate the colors to make things pop. Here are some more characteristics of what I talked about earlier. Even when it gets really dark here at Animal Kingdom, when you punch into the ground, there is more noise, but it's a more detailed image, and while it is dimmer, the exposure is nicer here in the background. When you take the photo with night mode, the iPhone produces the brighter image with the same exposure time, but the S24 Ultra's image does look more natural. Punch in and you can see the heavy over sharpening on both images, but you can see that hyper accentuation of detail that is typical of iPhone processing here. When it comes to single snapshots, I think the bump up in sharpening works here on the S24 Ultra. Better exposure on the sign and the image is sharper all around, so it is better. When night mode kicks in, the iPhone picks up more of that warm lighting with a more yellow tone, where the S24 Ultra picks up more of the red brick. The S24 Ultra exposes the sign even better with night mode, but the iPhone does keep the tree more intact at the top. Here are a few more. This is what I meant when I said they do go back and forth. Here the iPhone better exposes these lights and keeps the colors more natural, where the S24 Ultra accentuates the colors and saturates right off the bat. When night mode kicks in, it flip-flops to where the S24 Ultra exposes better, but now you can really start to see how much the S24 Ultra over sharpens. I would like to see that dialed back in a future software update when using night mode. Here is another example, again back and forth, where the iPhone's HDR definitely matched up perfectly to expose the lights correctly with a brighter image. Here is the night mode photo where the S24 Ultra this time picks up that yellow tint but oversaturates the image, and then when you punch in, you can see again how much sharpening there is on that image. I know some might like it, but it's definitely cranked up. Just like the daytime though, remember, you can change resolutions up to 200 megapixels, you can get some different results, so play around with it. Depending on lighting conditions, it can vary on which resolution gets you the brighter image, but for the most part, I would stick to the 12 megapixel by default setting. It gives you a cleaner image with better colors due to the binning structure, so let me know which mode that you shoot in at night. But there is another way to shoot at night though. To match Apple's 24 megapixel output, Samsung now has a 24 megapixel mode in Expert RAW. I did make a mistake on the last video where someone on Twitter pointed it out. You can save them as 24 megapixel JPEGs, so how do they compare? Since it takes a 12 megapixel and 50 megapixel shot at the same time, they expose like a night mode shot, so it does take a couple of seconds, so you can get some really clean shots like this one, so bright and clear where the iPhone did not trigger night mode. Here is a 24 megapixel shot from the Samsung where it brightens it up tastefully and it's razor sharp, handling the light sources well, where the iPhone keeps it more natural with a more accurate, warmer color tone, but struggles a little bit more with that light source since it's not night mode. So fun fact, when night mode gets activated like this on the iPhone, you get a totally different image, but it gets saved as a 12 megapixel photo, so I had to make sure that night mode was off to match the resolution of the Samsung. When comparing the detail with 24 megapixels on each camera, the extra sharpening on the S24 Ultra really brings out the texture of the wood, incredible detail, so try this mode at night. Here's another shot of the ground that I was standing on. I thought this would be interesting for texture, and punching in you can see how much more detailed this mode is on the Samsung, so I think they have something here at night. Even with human subjects, it brightens up the image nicely, very close to night mode. It is slightly over sharpened, but I think that can easily be tuned, especially if you shoot in RAW, that can be taken away pretty easily. But this mode has a lot of potential, and I think Samsung should develop this further for a better overall night mode experience. I know this isn't a direct 24 megapixel comparison on these last shots, but I wanted to show you how Samsung's 24 megapixel shots compared to the iPhone 15 Pro Max's night mode shots. They are comparable and the colors are better, so I think Samsung has something here, and with some tuning on exposure and sharpness, this could be something. So what about the other lenses? Well, here's what the ultra-wide looks like at a very dark wilderness lodge at night. You can't see much on either, but when night mode kicks in, this is impressive from both of them. It did take 3 seconds to expose this photo handheld, but it's not bad at all. When you punch in though into the sky, you can see clear banding on the sky on the iPhone where the S24 Ultra stays uniform. Here's another shot towards the main building and more of the same. It is really dark here, but the night mode really turns up yet again. The iPhone does keep a more natural look here with a much sharper foreground on the foliage, but the S24 Ultra does keep the tree intact on the upper left hand corner, which the iPhone smeared with that more aggressive noise reduction. You can see it here again on this one too with the tree branches, so I'm hoping to see this improved on Apple's future software updates. The 5X lens is probably the most interesting since it's new optically for both companies, so I will blend portrait mode as a whole on this comparison section. When it comes to the 5X lens, the larger sensor on the Galaxy S24 Ultra for the most part provides a better experience. On some of these photos you won't notice the difference until you punch in, but then you can see that the S24 Ultra has a cleaner and less noisy image, which is good news for Galaxy S24 Ultra owners. Here's an example with the main lens. This time the Galaxy S24 Ultra is a victim of banding, as you can see here. And here is the 5X shot, and you can see that the iPhone has a more noisy shot at 5X, so I think that is the biggest downside for iPhone users at night. That can also be seen with the portrait mode photos. The 5X performs better with the Galaxy S24 Ultra in most scenarios. You can see the difference here. The iPhone's looks decent, but it's definitely softer. Here is a portrait mode comparison at different focal lengths. They both look fantastic and I would be happy to share either one of these, but there is a huge shadow detail difference in the background which gives the win to the Samsung here. The 2X looks super similar. If anything, it could be a tad sharper on the iPhone, but not much of a difference. But you can really tell on the 5X portrait again, it is so much sharper on the S24 Ultra without all of the noise that you see here on the iPhone. So the 5X lens is just better at night on the Samsung. The bigger sensor really helps. There's also no night mode on the portrait mode for 5X lens on the iPhone. So when it gets super dark, it just gets worse. So I hope Apple enables that night mode on the 5X lens in the future for portrait. Now, this wouldn't be a camera comparison if the iPhone didn't sometimes create the better 5X portrait shot. This is one of them, and in this scenario, the differences don't look as drastic, so it will depend on the amount of lighting, but the Samsung takes the win on the 5X. Even when I was trying to just take photos of fireworks with the 5X camera on both, the outcomes were just so different. You can see exactly what's going on here. The Samsung is very aggressive in crushing those midtones so it can expose the fireworks properly, where the iPhone was just going for all of it and the noise level is just unreal. Even if you pull down the midtones to Samsung's level on the iPhone's image, I was still seeing some color impurities here on the fireworks. And of course, there were some anomalies as usual where the iPhone does better, but overall the 5X win goes to Samsung clearly. This is not a proper shutter speed test, but I took a lot of portrait mode shots at night and both of them struggle with movement as you can see here, but I did catch the iPhone getting some clearer shots while movement was happening, so I wanted to share that. The one thing I want to see improved on the Galaxy S24 Ultra's portrait mode and pictures with subjects in them is the tendency to super over sharpen. I know this is an algorithmic thing because the ones I showed you earlier, a lot of them aren't overdone, but when it happens, it's so noticeable. Take a look at my face here in this shot. I saw it right away, but let me punch in and you can really see how drastic it gets when it happens. I think you can really see it on my cheek the most. This one isn't as drastic, but it's definitely noticeable. Here's another one where the sharpening is definitely noticeable, so I wouldn't have mentioned this if I didn't see this on multiple pictures. The colors can also be tuned in lower light conditions a little bit better. This was picking up so much yellow from the artificial lighting. The iPhone is muted, but that is more like what it was in real life. Look at this car in the parking lot. That is a white car, so I am looking forward to some tuning. Looking at this 5X portrait shot, this also looked really off. While the iPhone doesn't nail it either, that's closer to what I was seeing, so I thought I would point this out. I also saw this on the front-facing camera as well, so it seems to be artificial lighting that is struggling with. Huge yellow tint here as well. Even though I must point out that the front-facing camera is so much sharper than the iPhone, especially with portrait mode on, since it doesn't activate night mode, so I shot a regular night mode shot to show you the difference in the clarity, and while I'm not a huge fan of the way Samsung handled the skin tones here, the iPhone turned me orange, which does not look very pleasant at all. Even when I get into better lighting, that red pickup on the face strikes again, and then again, even though it's not as bad here, it's still there. And this might be the best one yet, but the noise reduction gets my face pretty smooth, so I'm going to have to give the front-facing camera quality a win for Samsung. I think this one is the best one from the iPhone. Image quality wise, it was definitely more true to life and it looks great, but the white balance adjusting definitely helped landing towards the cooler side for Samsung. I think it just looks more pleasant, so let me know which one that you think looks better. One last test, of course, we can't forget the zoom. This is a night mode zoom test. Surprised to see banding on both phones here, but more noise on the Samsung and a little bit clearer on the iPhone's 2X. You still get an optical 3X lens, which is really nice on the Samsung, so I wanted to show that it looks pretty good. The 5X looks good on both as well, but the noise pattern is weird and blotchy on the S24 Ultra. And take a look at the colors here. The S24 Ultra could use some tuning. I didn't expect that. The iPhone's 10x digital looking really impressive here, even though the S24 Ultra is sharper. I am surprised by the detail on the iPhone though. A lot of this detail is missing from the Samsung image, which I also did not expect. There is the Max 25x on the iPhone and the 30x from the S24 Ultra. Here is a non-night mode zoom example. The first one is the 2x, a little brighter from the iPhone, and again there's that deeper red color replication on the neon, but there are those infamous green dots on the iPhone where you don't see them at all on the S24 Ultra, even on the 3x. There is the 5x, and you can see that bigger sensor lets in a little more light, producing the better image here. Look at that red on the 10x here on the Samsung. It's very close to the iPhone, which is great to see. The 30x and 25x is where you start to see the difference. The noise and the clarity on the iPhone starts to fall apart, where the S24 Ultra stays strong. So just like the daytime, the S24 Ultra should be crushing the iPhone since it's not advertised as a zoom phone, but surprisingly the iPhone keeps up better than I ever expected it to. So I hope this helped you out if you're trying to make a decision between the two. It's hard to call a winner because they both have their strengths and weaknesses, but I think with a little bit of tuning, the Galaxy S24 Ultra could be the better nighttime shooter. The 5x camera is better in low light, and the front-facing camera is better, and you don't get the intensity of light flares that you do on the iPhone, but they are really super close, and they both tend to over-sharpen in photos, so that's not just a Samsung trait. I don't want the people to get the wrong idea that the iPhone does not over-sharpen nighttime photos, because it definitely does. You can definitely see it on this flower, but if I have to give a slight edge, I will edge this one to the S24 Ultra, but I don't think it's a clear edge. It can go either way, so I will 100% visit this after the first major software update hits from Samsung, because this could change. So thank you for watching, subscribe for a lot more videos just like this one, and I will see you in the next camera comparison.